Welcome back, Defenders. We're going to start by talking about sanctions. The kind of sanctions that Ukraine is placing on Russia. Kinetic sanctions. Russian oil refinery capacity drops nearly 10% after Ukrainian drone strikes. Two of Rosneft's largest oil refineries have been knocked offline following Ukrainian drone strikes last week, sidelining key infrastructure for at least a month. This article is already outdated. Ukraine is continuing to strike Russian oil refineries. 2 nights ago, Ukraine successfully struck the Saratov oil refinery. Here's a video, and this looks pretty bad. This oil refinery has been on fire now for 2 days. The Russians can't put the fire out. This is where this is located on the map, and I can even zoom in and show you on Google Maps. And when we zoom in, Saratov is on the other side of the river to Engels. The Engels Air Force Base has been struck numerous times, and this oil refinery is located over here. And this is a massive complex. It's huge. Look at the size of this refinery compared to the size of the city. And it's not operational anymore. In addition, last night, drones reportedly hit Russian oil plant in Komi, which is over 1,000 miles from Ukraine, in a first-ever strike. Look at where this is located on the map. This is 1,700 kilometers from the front line, and Ukraine yesterday struck it with a drone. I'll link the videos down below. So it's not 10%. It's now 14% of Russia's total refining capacity has been knocked offline in just 8 days. Going back to August 2nd, the refinery in Novokubeyevsk was struck, as well as the Ryazan refinery, then the Afipsky refinery, and now Saratov. Russia has a serious problem, and there's no way they can make this stop if this is what Ukraine wants to do. If Ukraine wants to continue pounding these oil refineries. So this is what is going to cause Russia's economic collapse. Russia's budget deficit blows past annual target in just 7 months. So the finance ministry said Friday that the Russian deficit has reached 4.8 trillion rubles, the equivalent of 61 billion US dollars, between January and July, which is 2.2% of GDP. Basically, this is what they budgeted for the entire year. And they hit their budget deficits expectations within 7 months. July alone added another 1.1 trillion rubles to their shortfall. So here's a graph showing Russia's state budget going back to 2006. The blue is before the full-scale invasion. The red is since 2022. And yeah, Russia had good years, budget surpluses, and they had bad years. This is 2020, this is COVID. Every country in the world basically had a budget deficit in 2020, but they returned to profitability or a surplus in 2021. But now going into the war, the last 4 years, deficit after deficit after deficit after deficit. They're depleting their national wealth fund. This is not sustainable long term. Russia can't keep doing this another 4 or 5 years. They got like 1 or 2 years left in the max before hyperinflation and a collapse of their economy. Russia is not in good shape. Russia cannot project strength. Every day on social media, guys, I see videos such as this. Russian soldiers riding scooters, bicycles, motorcycles, Mad Max vehicles through the occupied territories. Everything is destroyed. All the people are gone. And these Russian soldiers serve no purpose, aside from dying in a meat assault. This guy's not even wearing a helmet. But the Russian military is pathetic. They are not making significant progress on the battlefield. They could never be weaker than they are today. So of course, Donald Trump is looking for a way to save them. Trump says he's going to meet Putin next Friday in Alaska. This is the big story. This is Trump announcing the highly anticipated meeting between myself and President Putin will take place on August 15th in the great state of Alaska. Okay, so why Alaska? And Putin is terrified of his plane being shot down. If Putin flew to the Middle East, then Ukrainian intelligence would get potentially 2 shots at shooting down his plane over someone else's country. Going to Alaska means that he can safely fly over the Arctic Ocean, and he doesn't have to fear Ukrainian interceptor drones. These are the pictures and videos of Ukraine's drone tech that is evolving in real time. Every day, every nightly attack, trial and error, Ukraine is experimenting. All of these components are 3D printed, so they just make a tweak in the design, and then they print new propellers, new wings, new stabilizers. This technology is getting really good, and we are entering a new world where I don't think it's safe for any world leader to fly on a plane to go around the world, because this thing costs $2,000, and eventually it will be good enough to shoot down civilian commercial airliners. This is not a Stinger missile. This is 3D printed technology that anyone can buy the components for on Amazon or Alibaba. This is not great, but this is what Putin rightfully fears. So that's why they're talking about Alaska. Second, Putin wants to visit US soil and spit in the face of international law and the rules-based order. Putin has killed millions of people and is the #1 terrorist in the world. Trump is about to give him the red carpet treatment on US soil. American democracy has fallen, and Putin wants to prove it to everyone in the world. This just isn't about the crimes committed in Ukraine. How many people in Chechnya did Putin have killed in 1999 and 2000? Hundreds of thousands of civilians died. These are Russian citizens. Technically not. I think Russia in 1994 did recognize Chechnya's independence, but Russia violates every peace treaty they sign with anyone, and they eventually go back for more. What about Syria? How many hundreds of thousands of Syrian civilians did the Russian military kill to try and keep Bashar al-Assad in power? What about all the African republics in which the Wagner Group has sponsored coups? How many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in Africa is Putin directly responsible for killing? There's, of course, Transnistria, Moldova, Armenia, and now Ukraine. And this is who Trump wants to welcome to US soil. And then there's finally the Russian nationalists who view this as a coup. Russian nationalists view Alaska as being rightfully Russian territory. It was once part of the Russian Empire. Trump is going to kiss Putin's feet while welcoming the Tsar back to his old imperial territory. This is what the Russians say every day. Here is a billboard in Russia saying Alaska is ours. Here's another billboard in Russia saying we will teach you to love the motherland, including basically all of Central and Eastern Europe, all of the Caucasus, Central Asia, Mongolia for some reason, and of course Alaska, which eventually they think they'll get back after the United States collapses. Here is Kirill Dmitriev. This is the CEO of Russia's direct investment fund. On the announcement the meeting is happening in Alaska, highlighting Russian Orthodox churches in Alaskan territory. The evil American government is oppressing the ethnic minority of Alaska, and the Russian military has to swoop in someday to protect this oppressed minority. That's not what they're saying today, but maybe in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, if the United States weakens further and Russia somehow pulls themselves up with this new grand alliance with China, yeah, I think they'd like the oil and gas reserves in the Arctic, and they'd like to cut the United States out. This clip from Russian Media Monitor is from 2 weeks ago. Andrei Kardabalov says Russia wants Alaska back. This is Kremlin State TV. Nothing is said on Kremlin State TV without the approval and consent of Vladimir Putin. So this is just the Russians making fun of us. The Russians could not have any more contempt for America and for Donald Trump and Donald Trump is just too stupid to take a hint. So what is this meeting's purpose? Putin proposed halting war in exchange for Ukraine's eastern regions in meeting with Witkoff. So August 8th was the deadline. If Russia didn't stop the war, then crippling sanctions, crippling tariffs, secondary sanctions, secondary tariffs were going to bring Russia's economy to a screeching halt until Putin stopped the war. But Trump sent Witkoff to Moscow to give Putin one final out. And Witkoff is an idiot. This is what happened. On the call, Trump suggested that Russia would be ready to withdraw from the southern region of Zaporizhia and Kherson in exchange for full control of Donetsk. However, Witkoff walked back that claim the next day in a call with the chief aides of European leaders, suggesting that Russia would both withdraw and freeze the front line. There's confusion. On Friday, European officials demanded a third call with Witkoff to clarify the growing confusion about what Putin actually proposed. In that call, Witkoff clearly stated that the only offer on the table was for Ukraine to withdraw unilaterally from Donetsk in exchange for a ceasefire. Witkoff misunderstood Putin's words and interpreted them as a concession. Oh my God! So what the Russians have been demanding from Trump for 7 months is force the Ukrainians to give up all of Donetsk, all of Zaporizhia, all of Kherson, all Ukrainian forces out of these 4 oblasts, Russian troops get to move in, and then we'll have a temporary ceasefire. And if more conditions are met, at some point in the future, we'll start the peace process. Russia's not conceded anything. Russia has not budged on anything. But with this meeting with Witkoff and Putin, apparently Putin, this is what I think happened, Putin said, if the Ukrainian military withdraws from all of Donetsk, then I'll agree to a ceasefire. Putin was no longer demanding all of Zaporizhia and all of Kherson for a ceasefire. So Witkoff probably asked Putin, and there's translators going back and forth. Witkoff probably said, wait, so you'll agree to a ceasefire if Ukraine gives up Donetsk, but what about Zaporizhia and Kherson? And Putin said, don't worry about Zaporizhia and Kherson right now. We don't need all of Zaporizhia and Kherson for a ceasefire. So Witkoff went back to Trump and said, the Russians don't want Kherson and Zaporizhia if they can just have Donetsk. And Trump said, fantastic. We'll do a land swap deal. The Ukrainians will pull out of Donetsk, Russia takes this territory, and the Russians will pull out of Zaporizhia and Kherson, and Ukraine gets this territory back. When the Russians never agreed to this, they never offered this. Do you really think the Russians would give up the city of Tokmak, the city of Melitopol, the city of Berdansk? The land bridge to Crimea was one of the primary purposes of this war, to connect Crimea to mainland Russia and secure fresh water from the Dnipro River. So there is no deal. The Russians aren't conceding anything. The Russians aren't trading or negotiating anything. There's no deal. So this meeting is supposed to happen on Friday, and there's a good chance that Trump is going to cancel it. Or Putin's going to cancel it. Putin voiced the same exact demand for Ukraine's capitulation that Russia has been making for years. There's nothing to discuss. But Trump still wants the meeting. He still wants the spectacle. He still wants the world's eyes and attention on him. Trump has been desperate for 7 months to have a face-to-face with Putin because he loves Putin. He views Putin as his idol and role model. To this day, Trump still will not say anything bad, anything negative about Putin, because he admires the man so much. He respects him. A strong man who has stayed in power for 26 years, who has gotten every business leader in Russia to bend the knee. He has exiled or killed every political rival. He has subjugated every judge. He has subordinated every journalist. There is no free speech. There is no free media. everyone in Russia has to serve whatever whim Putin wants. That's what Trump wants in America. So Trump did the exact same thing in 2019 when he visited Kim Jong-un at the DMZ. Trump is so annoyed that Barack Obama has a Nobel Peace Prize. In 2019, he was trying to broker peace on the Korean Peninsula. North Korea and South Korea had never signed a peace treaty, just an armistice. And Trump thought he could get the North Koreans to give up their nuclear weapons or demilitarize or sign a peace treaty or something to get a Nobel Peace Prize. And the North Koreans just jerked them around. They were never willing to give anything up. They were never willing to concede anything. So Trump got bored and he just gave up on North Korea. This is so stupid. Here's the historical analogy of what Trump is trying to do, giving up Ukrainian land for peace. This is September 15th, 1938 from the Daily Mirror. Chamberlain flying to see Hitler today. Let's try to find a peaceful solution. So the lead up to World War II was the Allies agreeing to concede the land of another country to a murderous dictator for peace in our time. Trump, being kind at best, is a Neville Chamberlain figure leading up to a new world war. No matter what Witkoff may have told Trump, there is no scenario in which the Ukrainian army would voluntarily withdraw from Sloviansk and Kramatorsk and hand over these major cities to Russian occupation. Even if Trump pressured Zelensky and Zelensky wanted to do it, he would face a mutiny in his own military. The Ukrainian soldiers on the ground who for 3.5 years had been defending these cities, they would never voluntarily give up their homes, give up the lives of their families. Like, the people wouldn't evacuate. They would stay on their farms. They would stay in their homes. They would fight and resist with Molotov cocktails, sticks, and rocks if their own government in Kyiv abandoned them, which Zelensky obviously would never do. Here are the fortification structures. This is the real reason why Putin is saying force Ukrainian soldiers to give all these up. Because if Russia took or got past these fortifications, it would then be easier to go deeper into Ukraine. If these defensive lines, which Ukraine really has spent more than a decade constructing, going all the way back to 2014, if Russia could bypass these, then they could easily take the city of Izium, threaten Kharkiv from the south, go over to Pavlograd, and even threaten the city of Dnipro. The Russians are just playing games to try and look for an advantage on the battlefield. They don't want a ceasefire. They don't want a peace deal. They want to kill as many Ukrainians as possible and steal their land. So, of course, Zelensky's going to speak up. Zelensky warns against decisions without Ukraine. At the moment, Ukraine is not invited to this peace summit in Alaska. This is two leaders talking about redrawing lines without the inclusion or input of those countries. Ukrainians will not gift their land. Zelensky rejects the idea of territorial concessions. Here is what President Zelensky has to say. Ukraine is ready for real decisions that can bring peace. Any decisions that are against us, any decisions that are without Ukraine, are at the same time decisions against peace. They will not achieve anything. They are stillborn decisions. They are unworkable decisions. And we all need real and genuine peace. Peace that people will respect. Zelensky has to be careful not to say Trump's name, criticize Trump, or come off as ungrateful, because Trump will flip on Zelensky again. Trump earlier this year was calling Zelensky a dictator. Zelensky is illegitimate. And we don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what Trump is going to say or do, because he's an idiot, and he's evil, and no good will come of this meeting. Ukraine is not a real estate deal. Ukrainians see Trump's land concession proposal as a betrayal. So here is the thoughts of one Ukrainian soldier. I don't know how to say his name because it's in Cyrillic, but here are his thoughts. We have again come to the point where someone might want to give the Russians a part of Ukraine, even the one they couldn't capture. No Ukrainian official, without being crazy, would try to give the army an order to leave the territory of their own country voluntarily without a fight. So if Putin really wants Kramatorsk and Zaporizhia, he will have to take them by force. The dead in Ukraine are sacred, and the people who are still left alive, the people still fighting on the front lines, they're not going to betray the sacrifice of their fathers and brothers by willingly giving up land because Donald Trump is looking for an easy way out. Donald Trump is looking for a quick solution because he doesn't care. He doesn't care about Ukraine. He wants to do business with Putin. He wants good relations with the Russians, and he just wants this war to stop. Doesn't matter how. So the allies are scrambling. US, Ukraine, and NATO allies rush to high-stakes UK meeting to forge united stance before Trump meets Putin. The good news is that Putin needed time to arrange the security to safely go to Alaska on Friday. So this gives Zelensky and European leaders 5 days to talk to Trump, to talk to Witkoff, to put out press statements, or even have a gathering, which I think is what's going to happen. I think European leaders and Zelensky are going to meet somewhere. Munich, Brussels, London, I don't know. And they're going to say this is not okay. Putin and Trump are not allowed to have a Yalta conference in which they carve up the world. There are no handshake agreements when you're talking about somebody else's country. If the large states, if Xi, Putin, and Trump are allowed to do this, then they will continue doing it into the future, dividing up the world, resolving differences amongst themselves, and dictating to smaller countries if they have the right to exist or not. Here is the statement from President Macron. I have just spoken again with President Zelensky, as well as Chancellor Merz and Prime Minister Starmer. We remain determined to support Ukraine, working in a spirit of unity and building on the work undertaken within the framework of the Coalition of the Willing. Ukraine's future cannot be decided without Ukrainians, who have been fighting for their freedom and security for over 3 years now. Europeans will also necessarily be part of the solution, as their own security is at stake. I will continue to coordinate closely with President Zelensky and our European partners. This is what Putin wants. He doesn't want the Europeans at the meeting. He doesn't want the Ukrainians at the meeting. This former KGB intelligence officer wants Trump one-on-one so he can manipulate him, so that he can fool him. He can convince him to his side and his perspective. But here's the funny thing. Putin might walk away from Trump. For 7 months, Trump has been desperate to maintain this friendship with Putin. And Putin's been putting on a ruse. He's been playing a role, like he is somehow ever going to be willing to stop these wars. But Putin might get to the point on his own where he just tells Trump to F off. This is what Lukashenko has to say about this meeting. Lukashenko's been actually pretty interesting the last couple months, but here's what he says. That's not how it's done. Listen, I came, I said, I gave you 50 days. Listen, Trump should always understand that he can be told to F off. And this is what Putin is doing. He is telling him to F off. Well, he has not done that yet, but he might. Why would Lukashenko publicly say this unless behind closed doors Putin has told Lukashenko, Trump's annoying, I might just tell him to get lost. I don't want to be friends with him. And Putin loves playing with Trump. He loves just insulting him and undermining him. Putin needles US by giving Trump envoy an award meant for CIA official whose son died fighting for Russia. This man, his name is Michael Gloss. He identifies as a communist. He's an American citizen. He was backpacking and found his way to Russia and was tricked into joining the military. He was then sent to the front lines and immediately killed. But Putin gave Witkoff an award, the Order of Lenin, for Witkoff to give to this man's mother, who works for the CIA. Putin just did this to be funny. I really do wonder what MAGA thinks of these American citizens who choose to fight for Russia, because they're either communists, Nazis, or pedophiles. These are really the only kinds of Americans who choose to support Russia. Here's some bad news. Russian new tugboat sinks in St. Petersburg, another blow to fleet crippled by Ukraine's strikes. I don't think Ukraine had anything to do with this, but this is one of Russia's new Navy tugboats, and it capsized in St. Petersburg. The cause was given as a violation of safety rules. Violation of safety rules could just be pretty much the tagline for Russia. Ukraine also is continuing their successful strikes on industry and factories across Russia. These videos all kind of look the same, but this is a very large drone slamming into a factory somewhere, and then a big explosion. This specific factory was located in Nizhnekamsk, and it was supplying something for the Russian military. Let's get to the good news. Canada joins EU and UK in slashing Russian oil price cap to $47.60. Thank you so much, Canada. Latvia joins Europe's Trump-proof weapons funding mechanism for Ukraine. This is the new thing. If Europeans want to buy weapons from US companies, this is now the initiative that they do it under. This is called the Priority Ukraine Requirements List, or the PURL. And it's voluntary. This is not NATO. This is not the European Union. It's any country that wants to buy weapons for Ukraine. They consult with Ukraine, and then they consult with US defense manufacturers. So under the PURL, Ukraine compiles priority weapons needs in packages of approximately $500 million. NATO allies then negotiate amongst themselves to fund specific items directly from US manufacturers. The mechanism has already proven effective. In early August, this is the Nordic countries. They committed $1 billion through this new PURL system to get weapons to Ukraine. The deliveries will start arriving soon. This is what we're doing. Thank you, Latvia. Final couple videos I think I can do too. The first one is a Ukrainian defender returning home for leave, and he wants to surprise his mother.
Давай вылазь.
Откуда ты говоришь? Home safe. Last video for fun. I always enjoy seeing Ukrainian defenders interacting with wildlife, and Ukraine has foxes. Here's a defender offering a sandwich to a Ukrainian fox.
Иди, на, тут бутик тебе, смотри. Бутик какой сделал. Иди, да. Иди кушать. Будешь? Иди сюда. На. Брат, ну давай. Что ты облизываешься? Бутик тебе сделал. Смотри какой. На. Вот тут положу, смотри. Вот. Все, иди бери. Да все уже в рот пихай. Не вмещается. Ну иди отнеси, придешь еще. О, вмещается. А вот тот. Все. Бутик чисто. Пошла. Приходи еще, тут еще есть. Иди.
What does the fox say? Thanks for the sandwich. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, Give me a thumbs up, best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.